the breath is universal. And the reality is no matter what religion or faith background we come from, there are universal principles. Being aware of our bodies, of being aware of our breath, of stopping, of noticing, of paying attention. Every faith, every religion has some element of this. And so this isn't some far off, Eastern thing that's totally foreign to people. But I think just getting access to secular teachings that help people understand the connections with their own body as a starting point. The breath is the gateway to awareness.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who is out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Hey, welcome to The Exploding Human. My name is Bob Nickman. My guest today is Sue Schneider, and we're going to be talking about, among other things, medical anthropology, mindfulness, and integrative health. But first, I'd like to invite you to visit my website, theexplodinghuman.com. Over there, you can listen to episodes, read synopses, see photos of my guests. There's a little bio on myself. There's also a YouTube channel where you can listen. That is The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. As I said, my guest today is Sue Schneider, Ph.D. She currently is teaching at Colorado State in Fort Colins, where she lives. She's a mindfulness coach and instructor. She's also an author, and she's going to be talking about the power of mindfulness in helping people to change their lives and how she does that and how that works. And we also talk a little bit about how we can use the idea that we're going to die to help us to live more fulfilling lives. I really enjoyed talking to Sue, so let's get into it. This is Sue Schneider. Sue, I'm so happy you're here. The question I wanted to start with is, what is a medical anthropologist? I think I have an idea, but I'd like you to explain that because it's such a cool title or moniker, whatever you want to call it. But what is it simply? What are you doing over there medically anthropologicalizing?
Oh, fun. Well, cultural anthropology has been around forever and ever. And there's a curiosity there about how other cultures live and behave and what can we learn. But medical anthropology is a little bit newer. I mean, it's been around for decades, but from my perspective and where I went into it, it's really focus on how other cultures do health and healing across the world. And there is so much to learn. Our Western culture is not really hitting the nail on the head with healing and the way that we take care of ailments and understand the sources and causes, the collective aspect of healing, the soul aspect of healing, the spirit, the mind, the body connection, all of those things.
There's almost like a fear of a lot of this stuff. My wife was talking to a neighbor the other day, and he was telling her he had hit some injury. This is a physical thing, but he had some injury. And she made a couple of suggestions about some supplementation that he could do to help this injury, and he's having joint pain. So she was suggesting some things that she has done, and for that, and she said he just glossed over and he couldn't take it in. He looked at her like she was nuts. Oddly enough, farmers that take care of their cattle or other animals, they understand this stuff. They give supplements. They treat their animals, because there's money involved. It's their income, so they're gonna give supplements to their goats and their cows and all that stuff, so they don't get certain diseases or other problems. But this guy he was so
closed off,
not adamant, just a wall went up. He just didn't. It's like, how dare you challenge the status quo, of which he wasn't even aware that there was one.
Yes, there are many who prescribe to the Western approach. And, it's like either a pill will do it or nothing else will do it. And that's okay, and there are traditions and practices flowing through our own culture here. We don't have to go very far to access any other kinds of medical approaches. They're right here.
Yeah. Now you teach a number of things at the university and community level. What are those things you teach, and what's this kind of interest level from students? Obviously there is an interest level, and how is it affecting people, and what, tell me about that. Cause I think that's really an interesting thing, that you're not an actual, well, I guess you're a practitioner of mindfulness and meditation. You actually got a job at a university teaching this stuff.
I do. It's part of my job. It's not my whole job by any means. But yeah, for the last really 8 years at Colorado State, I have been able to bring my mindfulness teaching into the community. So my job previously, I recently switched up as a state kind of health organizer, but on a county level, one of the things I did was bring community education. And with my background as a mindfulness practitioner and certified mindfulness instructor and integrative health coach, I was able to bring tools and workshops and classes, all sorts of things to a number of populations. Actually, it was largely focused on community members in my county. And I did a lot of work with older adults, actually, bringing mindfulness techniques and meditation to supporting those groups of people, and also internal within the university. Now, in my role on a state level, I am working with our professionals. We're Colorado State University Extension professionals in really supporting their well-being through things like mindfulness and self-care planning. And really what that is stemming from right now is just, there's high level of burnout. People are pretty overwhelmed and pretty exhausted, and really bringing tools of mindfulness into this group of professionals who are out in the community serving our populations is a really important thing. How do we take better care of ourselves so we can do this community work that we do?
It's almost like you're granting people permission to enjoy themselves and not overwork. I mean, I think Americans way overwork. That's just my feeling. I'm not saying be lazy, whatever that means. But the idea of, just the fact that we talk about work-life balance indicates there really is none, and maybe there shouldn't be. Maybe should be, and I use the word should just because it's an easy word to use, but I don't know anything. But the idea of how much time do you spend working? How much do you spend time living? And are you, living to work? Or are you just having a work experience and you're really enjoying your life? Because for me, I know for me, there was times being ambitious, let's say, which is a really tricky word. If you have if you're not ambitious enough, whatever that means too, then, you can feel bad about yourself, or other people can judge you like, oh, that guy's not very ambitious.
Of course, there are so many pitfalls with all of that, but I think what's happening is we're losing our way, and just the basic principle of bringing awareness into our days. I mean, we are so bombarded with technology when all of a sudden we have 16 platforms that if you work in an organization, you're managing platforms and phones and computers and, instant needs just coming at us. And of course, working in a community-based kind of setting that I do, the needs in the community. And our tendency is to, lurch ahead, make sure we're serving in the best way we can, or doing, because that's the culture of work environments wherever we are. And it's just not so commonplace that we build into our routines a way to check in, a way to notice when we're getting activated, when we are just overwhelmed, when we need to take a breath and actually get perspective. So no matter how much ambition we have or desire, to succeed. And all of that is great as long as we are acknowledging this is where I am. I have this strong desire. Let me take a look at it. Maybe it's serving me well right now. Maybe I need to pull it back a little bit, but this is exactly where mindfulness comes in. It's this awareness piece so that we are not just traveling down this highway of life without any clue where it is we're going or what we're doing or what is telling us when it's okay. We so often override that adrenaline, that anxiety. If there's no way to touch in and recognize what's going on, then we make decisions that aren't very wise and aren't very supportive of our well-being. And I think that's what's happening a lot.
Mindfulness, you hear the word a lot. It's really, to me, it's about paying attention and to what your intuitive and physical body is telling you. And, when you get a sort of deadened to that or unaware of it, some people don't even know. And some people know that they're not comfortable, but they don't know that they're allowed to or how to change what that is. Change your perception in a sense, or just modulate the amount of effort you're giving things that aren't making you feel good.
Absolutely. Right. And you bring up two rungs of this that we're not allowed to. Number one, as if it's not okay to slow down at any point. It's not okay to step back and take care of ourselves. And this is, cultural and familial. We're raised with these messages, of course. So the permission piece of it's okay. And I can take a walk my lunchtime instead of sitting in front of my computer, or I can, come home and maybe do some centering before I get involved in the family time. That permission is so important. You have permission. Sometimes they just need to hear it. I see this all the time in my workshops. People are so surprised, oh, it's okay. That's great. But number two that you mentioned is knowing that there are tools. And there is this vagueness in our society about meditation and mindfulness. People know it's out there, but it's not often concretized for people. It sometimes seems so far away, or it's like something that, yogis do and people go to India for, and, even if they see it in their society, sometimes it's really hard to access. And so my work really for this last 10 years has been to try to make this stuff so accessible that you can't miss it. I mean, you have to have a starting point, and you have to have trusted individuals that can walk you through just the concepts in the first place, and then the practices. And sometimes it's, people get stuck in the conceptual part of mindfulness. And so really breaking it down into really simple terms and making it accessible. It is out there, and there are more and more programs that are out there, and so many online now because of Zoom.
I just had this thought that I wonder if people somehow feel they're being disloyal to their religion of their upbringing if they meditate,
I believe that is, the case. And
isn't that, oh, really? Okay. I just thought of it myself just now. I was like, that must be like, well, a good, Christian doesn't meditate to meditation bells, because that's what those people in another country do. And that's,
Absolutely.
Somehow you're being unfaithful to your upbringing or something.
I think there are definitely barriers there. And it's really important to recognize, we have amazing secular mindfulness approaches. In fact, Jon Kabat-Zinn in the 70s brought in mindfulness-based stress reduction in a hospital, tested on patients. There's tons of evidence, and he really helped us in the West build a kind of secular approach to mindfulness. The breath is universal. And the reality is no matter what religion or faith background we come from, there are universal principles of being aware of our bodies, of being aware of our breath, of stopping, of noticing, of paying attention. Every faith, every religion has some element of this. And so this isn't some far off, Eastern thing that's totally foreign to people. But I think just getting access to secular teachings that help people understand the connections with their own body as a starting point. The breath is the gateway to awareness, right? And that it does not conflict with any faith. And you can have prayer at the same time as you can have, breath awareness in your day. And they complement each other. Any kind of modality that supports your connection with yourself, your connection with the world around you, any kind of connection is supportive. And so how do we rethink this whole mindfulness thing, and how do we incorporate aspects of it and even include it in other practices?
Let's talk about the integrative health part of what you do. Explain that to folks, because I think people are starting that's such a great word, functional health, integrative health, what that is and how you help people to sort of navigate a new way or a more robust way of getting to an optimal health place.
Context of integrative health is really referring to how many components of us we tend to separate in our lives, that we do the body stuff, we do the exercise stuff and the rest stuff and the nutrition stuff and the mindfulness stuff, as if that is not connected through mindfulness. Actually, mindfulness is in the center of this model. This model was developed by Duke Integrative Medicine, the particular integrative health coaching model that I use. But the idea is that we need to at first maybe parse out where our lifestyles might be getting in the way of optimal health, or where there are shifts or changes we need to make. And even, prevention approaches. Are we doing our regular exams? Are we taking care of some basic things in our life? And when we kind of zoom in, we begin to notice that there are connections all over the place in terms of the rest that I do impacts the choices I'm making in my nutrition and my exercise routines, or the extent to which I can bring mindfulness into my life, or begin a meditation practice even can impact other choices I'm making, even like my environment that I live in and how I'm tending to that, or the pieces of self-compassion or self-care that I'm able to bring in my life. And so it's really just a way of looking at these multiple aspects of ourselves and seeing how they're really integrated. And again, mindfulness is in the center of this model. Literally, if there's a wheel of health, mindfulness is right in the center.
You were mentioning that you had a lot of senior citizens that you worked with. I'm obviously officially a senior citizen. I don't really act like one. Maybe in some ways. People tend to think of people that are older as being, quote, set in their ways. I don't really think that's necessarily true. I mean, I've narrowed down what works and what doesn't, but I am open to anything at this still. I'm probably more open-minded than I was when I was younger in a lot of ways. Do you find that to be the case? That, and obviously people are coming to you because they want something different. So you're getting a certain population, which is already, but I'm sure people fight things, ideas that you're presenting at first. But how have you found the senior citizen population?
I just so much enjoy working with older adults, because there is an earnestness about the way they approach the practice. I have found so much curiosity. And so they enter into this discussion about mindfulness and how to bring this into their lives with just pure curiosity. And maybe they don't understand, well, how might this work? And the truth of the matter is with mindfulness, you can't unravel the truth until you practice and you begin to experience it yourself. And there is something powerful about practicing in a group where whether it's an energetic field or whether it's just communion, and the fact that I'm not alone because I'm seeking something here. So there's something really powerful about that. When I teach classes about mindfulness, and these aren't the practice classes, but these are more theoretical classes, to older adults, I get the question a lot of, can I really change my brain? with some of this. We talk about gratitude practice and practicing kindness, and and how these intentional practices really can rewire our brain toward the good, as Rick Hansen, neuropsychologist, calls it. Like, we're moving away from our negativity bias, which is our evolutionary inheritance, and we're moving towards a more kind of positive state of being. And it's sometimes hard for people to grasp this when they're 85 years old and they're like, are you serious? Like, I can actually do this with my brain now? And I mean, the research definitively says absolutely you can, if you practice regularly and if you make it a somatic practice. So it's not just a thinking, I'm thinking through this process, but I'm actually experiencing it in my body. And so there are a lot of questions that come up about this, but I really see that there's a real space for older adults with this practice. I have learned so much as well about the transition of retirement and how complicated that is. And even if it's not a transition, even if it's 10, 15, 20 years into it, how much people struggle because there has been a routine in their lives. They have potentially struggled with, where's my meaning coming from? There are all sorts of things that, every life stage and age we have our certain struggles, but there's a pretty powerful, complex kind of transition going on. And for transition, being able to notice where we're holding that in our bodies and being able to notice where we get stuck, or the stories that we're telling ourselves about not enough, not good enough, I'm not doing enough, I'm stuck, these patterns that we repeat to ourselves, being able to bring awareness to them and then bringing compassion to those stories. But at any age, just to be able to recognize where we get stuck and where those patterns are, and to bring compassion.
One of the things that I've suggested to some people, and that I've tried to do myself, well, I don't even like the word try, that I've done myself, not perfectly, of course. I did not learn to say nice things to people when I thought them. That either they already know, or I don't want to look a certain way, or, whatever the reason was. So, just this sort of a little bit more contained kind of a thing. Yeah. But as an adult, I've suggested to people, every person you meet today, let's just pick today, it doesn't have to be forever. Every person you meet today, I say, I want you to give them a compliment in some way, and you have to mean it. It can't be fake. You actually have to take it in and say to them, I love your laugh. That is the coolest shirt. You're just, you got a really nice energy. Whatever it is that you are thinking, and oh my gosh, that changes things so fast. Because I know if people say shit like that to me, I love it. I'm like, thank you.
Well, you just saying that just brought such a big smile to my face, because when you were saying that, it was so genuine coming out of you. Yeah. And just that kind of energetic transmission is powerful in and of itself.
Beginning to changing the way you move through the world costs nothing. Absolutely. It's just a little bit. And I guess you have to be mindful of what actually is affecting you in a positive way. I mean, I think that just to try that as an experiment.
And you're talking about just a moment of kindness and connection. Well, what about those moments when you're frustrated and you're standing in the grocery store line and someone's just yapping away with the checkout person, and you're like, I'm on a schedule here. And what if you kind of changed the vibration a little bit and you actually started wishing both of them well? And said, may you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you enjoy this moment of interaction. Yeah. Changes the entire dynamic, right?
One of my goals when I speak to somebody on the phone, let's just pick a customer service person. So I think about who this person is, where they are, what they do all day. And also I think about how they're probably treated by most people. And sometimes they're treated as basically nothing, just a voice at the end of the line, or they're treated horribly because the person isn't getting what they want. So I always try to connect with them as a person, and I'll say things that they haven't really heard before from somebody calling for a customer service thing. I'll say, "Oh, I love your accent. Where are you? You sound like you're Canadian," something like that. Or are you from the Midwest? You have a little twang in your voice. And then they start talking about themselves for a second. And then if you can add in things about that, and this is all sincere on my part. I'm not doing this to be manipulative in any way. I want to have a pleasant experience. And I want to win them over as somebody that wants to help me, but I want them to want to help me. I'm not, you know what I'm saying? And so by the time I get off the phone with people, if I can get them laughing or just really happy. I mean, even the one thing, when they say, "Hey, is there anything else I can do or is there anything else I can do?" I said, "Well, what can I do? Is there somebody I can call? Because you need a raise. You're not getting paid enough. I know that." And they laugh. I mean, they go, "I don't think that can happen."
That makes their day.
It's
How many
so
people
great.
do
It's
that?
so
right?
And it's really fun because nobody who wants to call customer service and talk to somebody. Nobody wants to. They don't really want to probably be doing that job. Nobody gets up in the morning and goes, "Boy, I'd love to help somebody who's disgruntled about their toaster oven breaking."
And how much time does it take from you to actually view them as a person?
That's the other thing is people are in a hurry because they don't want to do it and they want to get it done as fast as possible. So they get aggressive.
Right.
The exact opposite of what's actually going to work.
Right. And I mean, you're talking about societal norms here. The simplicity of just flipping those norms, slowing down a little bit, trying to connect and trying to appreciate the other human being in front of us. I think one of the, not so great results of this fast-paced lifestyle is we just dehumanize people. They're there to serve us. They're there for us to get what we need in this world. And it is not a very kind or considerate culture at this point. So what are these small things that we can do? Can we keep a list of, 2 moments of appreciation during the day, if they're out loud or if they're just in our heart, or a regular routine phone call? Can we turn it into a connection point?
Yeah. And this idea of we were talking about ambition and accomplishment and all, I have to ask myself, and I'm sure, anyone would, is what am I actually thinking is going to happen when I accomplish these goals? Am I going to be miserable until I get it? And if I get it, is it going to actually make me not miserable? I mean, like the way there, today's lousy, but next week's going to be great because I'm going to have, this title or this much money or this much notoriety, whatever it is. And right. Am I enjoying, each day as I move towards something? Because what if I don't get there? Let's say I don't get there because, or let's say I haven't even drawn the target clearly in my mind. I just know that it's going to be better if I do this. There's an idea of you can't. I always love this. I did this Zig Ziglar workbook like 30 plus years ago. You know who that guy was?
I do not.
Oh, he was a personal growth guy. Zig Ziglar, and people used him in business a lot, but this was just really about a very simple premise. You can't hit a target until you've drawn it. And so this workbook was so helpful to me. Short, medium, and long-term goals. Okay. So not only do you say what the goal is, then you have to do this thing that was really hard for me. What are the specifics? And you got to be really specific of what I need to do to get, let's say, I want a better job. Let's just pick that. And the hardest one for me was, who do I need to speak to and talk to and or mentor from in order to do that. And as somebody who believed that you do it all yourself and you don't ask for help, it was so hard for me to do. And my first instinct is, asking for help. Well, I guess the two hardest questions or two hardest things to say is I don't know and I need help.
Yes,
and if you can't say those things, and I didn't know that I was allowed to do that. I thought it was weakness. I actually thought it was weakness. It's the exact opposite.
Yeah. And I think you're not alone in that. Asking for help is so difficult for so many people. But it actually takes me back to this integrative health model, because what you're talking about is really a vision. Like, we can't get to where we want to go unless we are clear. And so there's a really powerful exercise that I do when I start out in my coaching process with anyone. And it's a guided meditation to meet your future self that lives a life of health and well-being. And it is fascinating what comes out of these visions with what they know they are. They can see, they can sense, they can feel the energy of that person, and they know where they're going from there, even though it's maybe years away, lots of steps to take. And the process is figuring out what those steps are. And as you're saying, baby steps, they have to be small and you have to build confidence along the way. But really being clear about your vision and who you know you can be, living this life of optimal health. We never get to that quote unquote endpoint, and we don't want to strive. That is something in mindfulness we learn. It's a non-striving agenda. We want to be appropriate in the steps we need to take and make sure we're following through, but not pushing us so it becomes another, task, or chore. But vision and values are what actually allow us to get where we want to go. But the other part of it is that we inherently know what we need in our lives, what we need to do in order to get to where we want to be.
What's the biggest shift you've seen in somebody? And if you don't have an example, that's fine. But I always love personal stories of people.
Maybe just one example. And I would say it's not even about the big shifts. And I know what you're asking, but I would say it's the subtle shifts, because we are fighting battles within ourselves. We are so self-judging. We are so critical, and we do have a lot of trauma in our bodies. And when we begin to take on a practice like mindfulness that allows us to open space for what it is that we have not been willing to see, or we have not been willing to touch into. And those things can get exposed carefully. We don't jump into these things. We don't expose our trauma. That's not a safe thing to do. It's a very gradual process. But when we're able to open space for the things that we have shut away, for some of us, 70 years, it can be a really long time. All of a sudden, there is an opportunity to experience some peace in a way that people have never experienced. And there's so much consideration of, how we live is how we die. And for us to think about the trajectory of our lives and where is all of this going? And how do I want to close out my life even? And I know some people don't want to talk about death, but there's some power in really being contemplative about the practices that we instill, the space we open up, the peace we can find in our lives can be translated into how we die.
I guess no matter how old you are, when you start to want to do certain things, it doesn't matter, because I think some folks might be reluctant because what if everything I've been doing up to now is bullshit? And I've got this new thing, and I look back and I go, oh God, I wasted X number. Well, I know I've done that in certain areas. I know I've done that. I know I've had a belief system that didn't serve me, and it still doesn't serve me. And I look back and I go, oh, all the missed opportunities because I believed this thing. But when am I going to do it? It might as well be today.
Every single day we begin anew, and we don't do it perfectly every day. But guess what? We wake up the next morning and there's a chance to start again.
Yeah, I did it perfectly yesterday, actually. The entire day.
The entire day.
I win.
Maybe one day.
Now, are we talking about a book you wrote or something? I can't remember. I was looking.
We might be talking about a book I wrote. Yeah. So
let's do that.
Moment with kindness.
There, I see that she's holding it up, and say the title and tell us about the book.
Yeah, the full title, is called Meeting the Moment with Kindness: How Mindfulness Can Help Us Find Calm, Stability, and an Open Heart. And I do believe I've been talking about this book all along. It contains many things that I have learned in my 20-year trajectory of working with mindfulness. But it feels really important in this moment to put this out there. And really, we've touched on so many ways that we can meet the moment with kindness, whether it's, sharing appreciation for someone in front of us or sending loving kindness to the cashier. But a big part of that is really the self-compassion piece.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it. And it's a hard thing for a lot of us until it goes back to the permission thing. If people understand how important this is.
I had a therapist once tell me if you couldn't afford therapy, he would say this to anybody. He says, anybody that can't afford therapy, the one thing I would say is that you could do is be kind to yourself. It kind of blew me away when he said it because I wasn't ready to hear it. But I guess I was ready to hear it because it blew me away. But it was like,
completely, you were ready to hear it. Yeah.
I mean, I'm allowed to do that. That's another thing. It's like, I'm allowed to do that. And now that I'm thinking about it, why would I be reluctant to do that? Well, one would be I don't feel I deserve to be kind to myself, and also that if you're too nice to yourself and you're not, if you're not hard enough on yourself, you're not going to get better.
There's some cultural expectations, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I thought, you want to be critical of yourself, so now you may be sort of, if you're not delusional about where you're at, and you're sort of being practical about what's going on, can you do that and still be kind to yourself and improve? Yeah. That was the difference to me. It's like, well, I thought, if I'm not hard on myself in a critical way where I feel actually bad about something, rather than, I'm not really that good at that piece yet, so I need to maybe work a little harder in that area, not necessarily, you're a piece of crap and you're, kinder. How you're an idiot. You didn't pull it off.
Oh boy, yeah, and well, there's a little, masculine culture as well. There are different things that men and women are receiving in our culture. I mean, for women, it's like selfless service, just do and don't, and we just get bombarded with these messages, don't we?
I mean, that's a whole episode. The cultural demands on women. I mean, everybody knows the sort of the men thing is a certain amount of money making and building a house and being strong and all that stuff, but women have a ton of these pressures that I think that could be a whole episode of just talking about pressures. What is it like to I know just from the things I've talked about with my wife during the different phases of her life and the things that she's been told and told herself and is just sort of unspoken, but it's there in the culture. I don't think a lot of cultures have these things that we've developed here. I mean, it's this idea that I can have it all, whatever that means. What does having it all mean? And also you can't. It's impossible. I'm sorry, right. You can't have it all because there isn't time. Just on the time factor, you can't do it all. whatever that means. If you're saying I can do it all, where's the time come from?
And then we have to pretend, right? But this is at the root of the burnout that I was talking about earlier. And these messages are extremely detrimental. And this is what I am really trying to help with. I write a lot in this book as being a young parent, which is the thing for me, even though I'd been practicing for quite a number of years, it really threw me off my game. And it really was that moment in my life where I recognized, boy, I'm not doing well. I can't do what I thought I could do. And I don't know that I have all of the tools I need to be able to manage all of these, kind of new, physical and emotional types of responsibilities. And it really forced me to practice in a very different kind of way. But it also forced me to ask for help. And I sought out, therapy and different modalities to see if I could find a way to come back into balance.
I'm laughing because my wife would just always say to me, man, raising kids is so hard. I go, only if you care. But my point really was maybe you're caring too much in too many areas at a high intensity level that really is maybe not even be serving the kid. Maybe they need to scrape their knees more or not get what they want or, just, be unhappy for 20 minutes. Who cares, really? Maybe that is actually is going to make them better. But there is a relentlessness to child rearing that somebody who hasn't had a child yet cannot even begin to imagine. Thanks for talking to me, Sue. And folks, get her book. And we're giving you permission today to change things. It's okay. You can live in the moment if you want to. Take a little rest if you need it. You don't have to accomplish anything. At least while you're listening to this, you don't have to. I'm going to give you permission for the next 10 minutes after you're done listening to this to get a cup of coffee or cup of tea and just enjoy your breathing and the fact that you're alive. How about that?
I love that. Thank you so much for letting me share today.
Thanks, Sue. You're the best. Much appreciation for you folks listening to The Exploding Human. The website is theexplodinghuman.com. The YouTube channel is The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. Once again, I want to thank Sue Schneider for being on the show. Check out her book, and you guys have a fantastic day. Thank you.